Himuro Sujiro was an ordinary office worker who had just recently moved to Tokyo. His life was full of changes because for various reasons he changed jobs every now and then. Although he was only 35 years old, but felt like an old man who was not capable of anything. At his new job, he worked like hell again and was even given overtime leave. When Himuro was coming home after work, he would cross the road on the pedestrian road. It was his usual way. But suddenly tragedy struck, either because of fatigue or stupidity, but Himuro didn't notice a truck coming in his direction, and accordingly, the truck hit our employee to death. As Himuro's consciousness was leaving this world, he suddenly heard a woman's voice asking him not to be afraid. The voice explained that Himuro had been hit by a truck and his life was cut short. In that case, the man didn't understand what it meant, since he was hearing someone else's voice. The voice explained that one day Himuro picked up a statue of a goddess and put it back on the altar. The voice explained that the goddess was her. Therefore, she had decided to reward him after his death. The man asked if she was really a goddess. She replied that she was, but that she shouldn't think about it so much. The goddess knew and felt that Himuro was a good man, and she was sorry that his life had taken such a heavy toll. That's why the goddess decided to send our hero's soul to another world. In that case, Himuro asked if that meant that the god gave him the right to create a new preservation. And the goddess confirmed the hunch. Still, she wondered what Himuro wanted to do, since there were so many worlds. The man said he wanted to live a quiet life, sleeping in his room as much as he liked. Not ride a stuffy train in the morning like a herring in a can. Not work for a company where you'd get overtime hours for any mistake. And not to eat store-bought food that didn't even taste good. Himuro remembered that he had once gone to a village and then gone camping, and the food he had prepared was the most delicious he had ever eaten. He remembered the wind rippling the leaves, the crackle of the fire. Those sounds healed his soul. Himuro knew that food prepared by his own hands was the most delicious. So he asked the goddess, and the girl realized that it was not in vain on that hike. He picked up her statue, thinking that it was fate, not otherwise. She felt that because Himuro was such a good man, she would issue a special and sacred weapon, namely the craftsman's equipment. The goddess explained that this weapon had two properties. With it, Himuro could create anything he wanted. It would be kept inside his chest, and when the man wanted to use it, all he would have to do was speak the name of the weapon. Himuro thanked the goddess for the gift, and the girl was surprised at how nice Himuro was for even thanking her for the gift. When he was done, she told him that it was time for him to leave, telling him not to worry because she would find the best place for him. Her name was the goddess Anna, and she had impressed Himuro already in the other world. Anna used a sacred light, thus blessing this soul, and also giving Himuro a sacred tool, explaining that these powers would help him live happily in the new land. Lastly, Anna explained that she had given the rest of the power she had to our Himuro, which immediately disturbed the man. Soon Himuro opened his eyes and found himself in a new world, where he felt very good, because all his tension in his shoulders, fatigue in his body, pain in his stomach from stress and gastritis, all of this is gone. Himuro was happier than ever for such an event, for in addition to the holy weapon, he had been given a healthy body. Remembering the holy weapon, Himuro decided to summon it after seeing the kitchen knife that glistened so beautifully in his hands. This knife was quite comfortable in his hands. Himuro understood how to summon and how to recall the weapon. All he had to do was call its name again.
Himuro even thought it was similar to the power that heroes in children's anime had. All of that was pretty much taken care of, but there was still one problem. This wasn't exactly what the young man wanted, since there isn't even any civilization here. Summoning his gun, Himuro remembered how he loved solo hikes, but ended up in the wilderness. Plus, for a hike you need more equipment. And all he has is fantasy clothes that are not hiking clothes at all. And his sacred knife, and that's it. But Himuro decided to calm down, because now was not the time to complain. He decided to think things through and remember the basics of survival. Looking at the knife, Himuro realized that it was a special tool that, according to the goddess, could take any form. It could also return to him if he left it somewhere. Himuro decided to try to transform the knife into something else, and remembering the words of the goddess, he knew that the knife could take the form of any tool. And after a while, the knife turned into an axe, much to Himuro's surprise.
Since the axe had to be tried, Himuro decided to throw it at a nearby tree, and when the axe flew into the tree, Himuro was shocked, not realizing how the axe had such strength, because the axe cut the tree in half. But there was no time to think and look, as the tree began to fall directly on the young man, and Himuro thought that this is too much, because he just reborn, and already on the verge of death. Not thinking of anything better, he decided to shout for the tree to stop. When he opened his eyes, he was surprised to see that the tree had indeed stopped. Himuro immediately remembered the goddess' words about the second ability, which is called improving conditions. The goddess was asked to imagine a situation where Himuro was building a birdhouse, but he has to somehow hold the nails with his fingers to drive them into the wood or work the wood on a workbench. But thanks to this power, all of that could be done without even thinking about it. Let's say Himuro doesn't have a table, that's okay. You have to take the board, fix it in the air. And besides, you can twist the board as you like. And if you don't have nails, what do you do? That's no problem either, you can give any shape without them. And if you want, you can undo the shape you have created at any time. The goddess explained that this tool literally has control over space and time and ignores the laws of physics. And Himuro thought that this power felt like some kind of glue. Anna shared that with this power, Himuro had a portable workshop in just one object. She asked if the young man understood everything? And Himuro answered in the affirmative. Looking at the axe and calling it back, Himuro realized that he had to be very careful with this thing, because otherwise it could maim someone. A little later, Himuro decided to get to work, but first he needed a walking stick. After all, the cane can be used to lift the leaves on the trees, or he can feel the snake under his feet with it. And also, the walking stick can help him when going through a difficult melee, and will also serve as a sensor for him to check the area.
Finally selecting the right branch, Himuro began to shorten it, noting that it was a perfect cut. Now it was just a matter of working the branch, and then stripping the bark off. Although the young man had little experience in this, it was quite good. Himuro realized that this was the power of crafting equipment. There was only one detail left: to make the handle. After making the handle, he decided to staple that to the cane, and now the hiking cane was complete. Himuro decided to test what it could do, and no matter what he did, nothing happened to this cane. He even hit it against wooden stone, but no physical effects change its shape. Plus, he could undo the enhancement and disconnect the handle and cane at any time. Himuro was glad for such a gift from the goddess, because thanks to this, he would be able to survive here with ease. Soon the cane was finished, so Himuro decided to explore the area, and first he needed to find a body of water. No matter how experienced a survivalist you are, a person can't survive without water is 3 days. Already if you don't drink for a whole day, you can get dehydration and dizziness. Himuro thought to himself that it was quite scary here, because the deep forest was a bit frightening. Although he had slept in the middle of nowhere in his previous life, the young man thought that the world the goddess had sent him to might be harsh and dangerous, but still, going forward, this path should probably lead Himuro to something good. Finally came the realization that Himuro was now free. And he's also very hungry. Since Himuro hasn't eaten in a long time, and for good reason, he should find himself and food first. After a while of exploring, Himuro still found a body of water, plus the water seems clean. Himuro came to the realization that he didn't need water right now, but at least he would know where the water was so he could drink. The first thing Himuro decided to do was to make a tent, as it could get cold at night and he needed a place to sleep. Soon he found the perfect place for the tent, a little far from the water, but it would be warmer.
Himuro started gathering materials. He found 3 strong branches and also thought of a rope to secure the sticks on top, and that was the hardest part. But thanks to the craft equipment, he was able to build and set up the frame without rope. Next, he decided to use leaves to cover the tent. This had to be done to protect himself from the rain. It was uncomfortable and cold to sleep on the ground, so instead of lying on the bare ground, Himuro put some twigs and threw leaves and grass on top to make it soft. Finally, the tent was ready, and Himuro was once again convinced of the usefulness of his tool. Still, it took quite a long time to build the tent, because he had to find suitable branches of a certain width and height, and he had to process them. But it took Himuro only 1 hour to build this tent. But that's assuming that he worked without a break to make it before sunset. Soon, a hare with a horn on its head caught Himuro's eye. Taking a closer look, Himuro realized that this animal was not dangerous. But soon the hare looked at Himuro and rushed to attack him with its horn, but Himuro defended himself with a stick. Using the craft enhancement, Himuro made the horned beast realize that since his horn had hit his stick, he would not be able to pull it out now that he had used the enhancement. While the hare was floundering around trying to escape, Himuro told him that he lived in the village, so don't underestimate him. All wild animals are inherently hostile to a new stimulus. So when you see a new animal, don't underestimate it. At that moment, Himuro felt that his body was moving very fast, as if coordinating with his thoughts. Himuro put his hands together and then thanked the goddess for such a gift and also for giving him food, which was bad news for the hare. But turning around, Himuro caught the beast's adoring gaze, which was begging him so much that he didn't roast it like some chicken. But the beast's efforts were in vain, as Himuro was very hungry. Himuro thought about the fact that he was afraid he wouldn't survive in this world. But it turned out to be really good here. Oh yes, fried rabbit meat is delicious. The first rule of survival states: 1. Kill the animal. 2. Drain the blood. 3. Remove all the entrails. 4th, rinse the carcass in cold water. 5. Remove the skin. 6th, cut the meat into bite-sized pieces. With all that done, Himuro wondered if it had any poison glands. He noticed that the heart of this animal was rather oddly shaped, but all the insides were ordinary, like a simple hair. Next, Himuro washed the insides again to get rid of any insect mites. Himuro heard a sound. He thought the animals were attracted by the smell of blood, but to his surprise he saw a cute puppy. Himuro was happy to see the dog, but still asked where his parents were. Looking around, Himuro concluded that this puppy had gotten separated from the pack since there was no pack anywhere. The young man wondered if the puppy was hungry. Immediately, Himuro threw him a basket of rabbit entrails, and the puppy immediately began to devour the food.
Himuro was attracted to the bow around the dog's neck, and Himuro probably wondered if it was someone's pet. But his thoughts were interrupted by a puppy that had eaten everything. The puppy started barking and then started running towards the forest. It was then that Himuro came to the conclusion that since the dog was wearing a bandage, it must have a master. Looking into the basket, Himuro was surprised that this puppy had only eaten the heart. Looks like there was something wrong with the rest of the insides after all. A second later, someone gave a shrill scream, making Himuro very scared. Looking up at a tree branch, he saw a blonde-haired girl with a bow and arrow who was glaring at him. It was then that Himuro realized that there was a real elf in front of him. The elf girl asked him if he had seen her puppy with a bow. Himuro realized that it was his mistress. In that case, he wanted to tell her that he had run away into the forest, but the girl thought that the boy had cut him into pieces. But Himuro argued that he hadn't. The boy explained that it was the entrails of another animal, and her dog had run off towards the forest, which immediately calmed the girl down. She apologized for her misunderstanding and hurried away as she had to catch the puppy. Himuro wished him good luck and the elfess thanked him and ran off to find her pet, leaving Himuro puzzled as he was seeing real elves for the first time. To survive in the wilderness, you will need food, water, shelter, clothing, and fire. But to make fire, you'll need the following. You need to get dry branches and grass, and Himuro even found resin. And thanks to the crafting gear, he was able to do the rest. It took him one try to make a fire. The rules of survival state: after you've gotten a fire, you need to boil water. Himuro made a container out of tree bark. It can be used without boiling anything 100 degrees Fahrenheit in it. To make this container, Himuro stripped a thin layer of tree bark to the right length. Then he softened them with water and shaped them. Then let the structure dry in the sun. The bowstring, by the way, he also made from tree bark, twisting it very thinly. When everything was ready, Himuro decided to try the water, and having drunk a little, he came to the conclusion that it was ordinary boiled water. Now the most important thing left. Himuro decided to start on the meat. For this he would need charcoals and a stone stove.
Of course, an ordinary stone would be fine for the stove, but Himuro then wondered if he could cut wood as easily as tofu, would he cut stone with the same ease? Or would it break? And thus, Himuro made a stone slab. After roasting the meat on both sides and then placing it on a wooden plate, the hair steak was finally ready. Besides, he had roasted the back part, and it was the most flavorful. Wishing himself a pleasant appetite, Himuro cut off a piece of meat and put it in his mouth, and then froze for a moment, noticing the unusual flavor. His mouth filled with meat juice with each bite. Normally, hare meat is dry, somewhat similar to chicken fillet. But this hare's meat is fatty and sweet. It even resembles duck meat. Himuro couldn't stop eating the fatty piece of meat. There's no salt, pepper, or any other seasoning in this meat. And still, the taste of this meat is unbelievable. At this moment, Himuro's face was so happy and satiated that it made me feel very happy myself. Even though it's ordinary meat cooked on a stone stove and charcoal, it tastes like high cuisine. Not having had enough, Himuro decided to roast the thigh as well. In this place, Himuro felt the solitude, the warmth of the fire, the pleasant crackling of the embers, the incredible flavor of the newly cooked food. Sitting by the fire, Himuro couldn't get words for the incredible meal. After a while, Himuro had had enough and now he had exactly 3 weeks to live. When surviving in the wild, you have to follow the rule of 3. If your fever stays down for 3 hours, if you haven't had a drink in 3 days, if you haven't eaten in 3 weeks, you die. But thanks to the crafting equipment, Himuro was able to survive comfortably and even acquired utensils, created a shelter and bed, and reinforced the shelter with additional wooden planks. Still, Himuro decided to make more cutlery and expand his home. After a moment, Himuro heard barking. Turning around, he saw a familiar animal and immediately remembered the elf girl who was looking for him. Looking at the pup, Himuro couldn't resist calling it cute. Unable to ignore such a marvelous animal, Himuro decided to reach out and pet the puppy, asking it if it wanted to eat. And the pet answered in the affirmative.
After the puppy had eaten, Himuro promised to find his mistress, but they will do it tomorrow, and now, Himuro and his new friend decided to rest and gain strength for tomorrow's trip. Well, if you liked Himuro's story and you want the second part, let's get 1,000 likes and also write the secret word in the comments. Dog. That way I'll know you've watched to the end. This manga has no English translation, so I had to translate it from Japanese. I tried my best to get the point across, so I hope you enjoyed it. That's all for now, see you guys later.